What's up, Facebook? I had a very interesting night, and so I figured I would tell you guys about it because I think it actually applies to a lot of the stuff that's happening in our country right now, and there's a lot of opinions about this kind of maybe unknown people group who are making a lot of headlines, and so I wanted to come here and I wanted to tell you about kind of what I experienced tonight and how I think we can enter into conversations that maybe are very difficult and very passionate, and maybe we have a lot of anger built up in us, but are we still capable of having such conversations? And so I came to Charlottesville today. Maybe you saw a few weeks back, there was a rally at the Robert E. Lee statue in Charlottesville where people like Richard Spencer, kind of one of the big names of this alt-right movement, this kind of white nationalist type movement, were seen in Charlottesville in front of the Robert E. Lee statue at night carrying like tiki torches, which is this very reminiscent symbol of, say, the Ku Klux Klan and things of the past that we would like to forget. We see people out in kind of big groups talking about these things. And since that has happened, if you're local to maybe Northern Virginia or Charlottesville, you may know that some of these people started having meetings at like Miller's, which is a popular bar on the downtown mall, and Miller's actually made a statement saying they would not serve these people. And so what's happened since Miller's has made this statement is that the people from the alt-right movement have come and they've started gathering around near Miller's on the downtown mall in Charlottesville and kind of just, you know, basically advocating for their rights. I actually talked to some guys tonight who actually compared their struggle to that of the civil rights movement of the 60s because they have beliefs and they are being denied service by certain bars. And so they associate their struggle with the struggle of people of color during the 60s, men like Martin Luther King. They associate themselves with that. And typically, like for me, that just like infuriates me, you know, like I get really, really upset about something like that. But am I still capable of having a conversation with these men? Do they deserve that? On a human level, I'm like, heck no, they don't deserve this. I'm angry, I'm upset with them. But as like a person of faith, as someone who believes in the fact that America has just lost the ability to even have conversations about things that matter, I probably was the only civil person in this crowd. Hey, who are you? What is your platform? What are you about? Why are you here? Why do you think people are against you? Asking them questions like this. There's a local guy, the group that was here is called the Proud Boys or something silly like that. And the guy who was leading it is a man named Jason. He had a camo, like, Make America Great Again hat. In fact, a lot of the guys who were there, they were wearing these, you know, their Trump hats basically. And they all had matching t-shirts, which were these like black shirts with like some sort of gold crest on them. So it was like a group of people who were together for a common cause, and that cause in their minds, what they said that they were here for was, well, ultimately they said they were just trying to have a beer. And how come when we try to have a beer, people get all upset and they don't allow us service and we're being oppressed and such and such. And so that was like their platform, but asking them like, you know, and they had like a Facebook group. They knew that these things were going to happen, and they were excited for them to happen. And so I sat down and I asked some of these guys, like, hey, what's your platform? And I asked a lot of the younger men who were probably younger than me, who were there, and I said, hey, why are you here? What is your platform? What are you trying to do? Why are people upset with you? And I would say there are probably about a little over 20, 25 people present. And I would say at least 8 of the people that I talked to had just met the guy who was causing a lot of controversy today. In fact, they knew very little about the man who they were associating with, which to me is just irresponsible. It's not very intelligent. You're basically associating yourself with a man who is causing a lot of division in your community, and you know very little about him. And I mean that. They knew nothing about this guy. And I didn't know anything about the guy either. And so I would ask some people, I asked some people of color, like, hey, what is their platform? Why are you so upset with them? And some of the things that I heard were like, hey, these men are terrorists, and what they're doing is they're terrorizing our city that we love, and they're promoting agendas that are against us and that they're not for us. And And there were people who were engaging them in very vicious ways, like in their face, like yelling at them, trying to cause a scene, stirring them up. And it's just like, look, as upset as we can get at things that we should be upset about, we have to, especially if you're like a progressive or a liberal, is I think some of the problem is we're incapable of even, we don't want to give some people humanity, you know? And in reality, if you're like a progressive or a liberal, sometimes you can actually be the more violent person in these situations. Maybe their ideas are violent, but when we're talking to one another, sometimes progressives and liberals are actually the more violent people. And that should be caution to anybody, is never forsake the ability to have a conversation and hear who people are, and even try, even if they don't deserve it, try and see the humanity of these people. And so I started talking with this guy, Jason. I said, hey, who are you? And what are you about? And he replied, well, you can go check out my website. And I said, hey, man, I'm probably not going to do that because I don't want to give you any revenue. I don't know who you are. I don't want to give you like a click. If that's how you make money, I'm not interested in that. And he walked away. He didn't want to talk to me. But eventually I got back to him, and he was like Facebook Living the whole thing. So he knew what was going on, and he made it all about his constitutional rights to free speech and whatnot. But the reality was he was there to make a scene. And that was one of the things I talked to him about. Is I think one of my kind of things that I say when people talk about being politically correct is I like to talk about how, hey, it's okay if the truth is offensive, but it's not okay to be offensive with the truth. And that doesn't mean that what they're saying is the truth, but for their platform, for their understanding, I think that they view what they're talking about as truth. The problem is you look at someone like maybe Milo, whatever his last name is he's someone who's very offensive with statistics. You know, it's like basically screw you, here's the calculations. And I mean, obviously there's nothing beneficial to doing that. And that was one of the things I talked to him. I asked the guy, I was like, hey, are you a person of faith? Like, are you a Christian? I'm a Christian. And one of the teachings that we believe is that, hey, some things are permissible. We have the right to do them, but they're not beneficial. And so why are you here? Like, what is your goal here? What are you trying to do? Is it to promote your right to free speech? Fine, you have that right, but are you doing anything beneficial here? By saying something like white lives matter, or by advocating for the supremacy of white people, you have the freedom and you have the right to do that, but why? What is your goal here? And a lot of the men that I talked to were like, well, we're not that. That's not what we're about. We're not associated with like Richard Spencer. We're not the alt-right movement. They don't like being called members of the alt-right, but they support, when you ask them what they're about Western chauvinism almost. We're about Western pride. We support the values of the West. We believe in the supremacy of the West, of capitalism, of all these kinds of things. That was what they communicated their agenda was. But by the way in which they were gathering and basically just stirring up the community. I mean, the entire community is disturbed by even just their presence. And they have the right to have that presence, but they were literally there just to make a scene. And I think that's really important to understand in the ways in which they conducted themselves, and the ways in which they were like in the face of even other people. And there was wrong on both sides. If you were someone who was against them, or if you were on their platform, there were people communicating their ideas in very wrong ways, in their face, rude, calling them names. And that's wrong. I think if you're a progressive person and you handle things that way, I think you're wrong. But the people who were members of this Proud Boys movement, such a silly name, their presence was wrong because it was meant to cause division. It was meant to disturb the community. It's meant to invoke division. And we can talk about ideas that we value, even if they're radical ideas, and even if there's an entire community of people who are against them. But the sheer presence that they were trying to do was basically to invoke division and to elevate themselves. And I always like, I was talking to some of these guys who were really against their platform, and I use this analogy a lot, because in essence what they were saying is like, the white supremacy is being taken, like white people are being repressed, white people are being marginalized. How do you feel about the fact that white people are about to be minorities in America? That was their question. How do you feel that white people will soon be the minority in America. And for me, I'm like, that's fantastic. I don't care. But what I communicated to this one guy, his name's Jason, is I gave him this analogy, and I think it's the perfect analogy. It's a little childish, but it's just perfect. Is this Toy Story analogy, and view white people as, say, as Woody in Toy Story. They're the favorite toy. They've always had the privilege of being the superior toy, the favorite toy, or the one who gets to shape the community that is, say, Andy's room. Woody is in charge. He gathers everyone together. He gets to steer his society. And then Buzz Lightyear comes in. He's this new and this cool toy. And Andy starts loving him equally. Buzz's influence with his community is equal to that of Woody's. And what does Woody do? He pushes him out the window. Because Woody, feels like he's being oppressed, that he's now secondary. When in reality, his privileges are just being shared with another. His ability to influence is now shared with other people. And I think that's this thing that maybe the members of the alt-right don't understand, and something that they fear is the fact that, hey, white people have been able to shape this society historically. And now we're in a situation where even in the next several years, those people will now be the minority in our country because America is deeply diverse. And the question is, do we fear that diversity, or do we accept it? And I believe in the kingdom of God. I believe in something like Revelations, I think it's 7, where it talks about, the many nations that are gathered together sharing this good news with one another. I believe in that, and I love thinking of America as a place like that. But what you started to see was that these people didn't understand that, and their fear is that the white person will lose their influence, or that the white person is being oppressed by things like white guilt, by things like the Black Lives Matter movement. They think that they're being marginalized, that their voice is no longer allowed, that their constitutional rights are being taken away because of the diversity that is increasing in America. And I think just meet them there. If you know people like this in your life, meet them in that and ask them about that, and really challenge the idea of, why is diversity a bad thing? Why is it not okay to be in a society that is representative of the entire world? Why is it better that white people be the majority? Why is that a good thing? Because that's their philosophy ultimately, is that it's better for society that the people who historically have shaped it continue to do so. And I think you have to challenge those ideas, and you can't do it by getting in their face, because it just doesn't work. It's not even, if you're a Christian, I would say it's not a Christian thing to do. And we can get mad as hell about it. And we can be super upset by what they're doing. And we can think it's unjust, and we can think it's wrong. But I think at the end of the day, we still have to try and treat them as people. And that's as hard for me as I know it is for some other people. I don't want to do that. I don't want these people to even have a platform. I don't want their voice to even be heard by others, because I think it's so barbaric and it's so evil. But understanding that even those people have a reason for what they believe. It may be filled with ignorance, but they have a reason for it. It's not just mere influence. There's a set of beliefs that come alongside that, and you have to talk about that. You can't change someone's behavior without changing their beliefs. And so I think you have to address their beliefs, and you have to deal with those kinds of things. And all that to say, I think it's just so important that my main point why I'm doing this video, or why I'm talking about these people, is that I experienced a very extreme form of culture that I profoundly disagree with. But entering into that and meeting it in a kind way, in a patient way, allowing them the opportunity to explain why they see things the way they do, and then being able to challenge those ideas with something like, say, hey, everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. Hey, statistics or not, do we care about other people? Do we care about their humanity? If you think that white people are better off, how did that happen? Like, what led to supremacy? What led to societies being shaped around white influence? Why did that happen? And meeting them with questions like that, asking them things, and not just yelling at them and dismissing them, it's very hard. It's very difficult, but I personally believe that that's the right thing to do. Because what I saw tonight from, say, more liberal and progressive people wasn't working. They weren't being heard. No one was listening to them. They were just angry and in danger of being arrested themselves because of how they were approaching these conversations. And I think whether it's social media, whether it's community gatherings, churches, Bible studies, coffee tables, whatever it may be, always be willing to hear the reason why people believe what they believe, and always be willing to enter into a civil discussion with these people. Because I was the only person, I genuinely believe this, I was the only person who was actually having a conversation with these guys and actually being able to be heard. I was heard because I was able to listen to them. I was able to hear them. The people who were screaming in their face, they didn't care. They weren't heard. They were dismissed. They were filmed on video and they were giving the people the exact thing that they wanted. So my challenge to all of you is, when you view someone like Richard Spencer, when you view someone even on your Facebook timeline, rather than screaming at them, calling them ignorant, calling them racist, calling them all these kinds of things, pull them aside for coffee, talk to them, and show them the humanity of others. Show them why Black lives matter. Show them why Indigenous lives matter, why Jewish lives matter. The people who they are against should not be viewed in the ways that they are, and that the white person is not a better person. There's nothing better about being white. It doesn't matter what history says, doesn't matter how our society was shaped, there's nothing better about the color of our skin. And really communicating those ideas and meeting a lot of these people are people of faith. A lot of them would identify as Christians, and I think if you are a person of faith, pull those people aside and have that conversation with them, saying, hey, what you're talking about, I'm viewing the teachings of Christ, and I want to know how you rationalize those things. Don't come in condemning them. Ask them the hard questions about, how do you reconcile what you were talking about with what Jesus was talking about? How do you reconcile your morality with the things that you say you stand for? And I think that if you can do that, and you can be civil, and if you can give them the humanity that all people deserve, whether they're barbaric, racist, and whatever it may be, we all deserve to be seen as human beings. We all deserve the platform of being able to express our ideas as Americans. If you believe in the Constitution and those kind of things, we should have the platform to express our ideas. I think if you can meet them in that, they'll become much more quiet, and they won't have as much to talk about. And that ultimately is my goal, is how can I keep these people from saying the ideas that they have. So I love Charlottesville. It hurts to see it associated with these kind of things. There were so many cops downtown. It just wasn't, there wasn't anything safe about it. I mean, it was terror. That's just what it is. It's terrorism. Maybe it doesn't express itself all the time as violently as maybe the common American views terrorism, but it is people who are terrorizing communities by promoting their ideas that cause division and fear. And I think it's important that we understand that, and that we address it as such, but also that we're willing to even see the humanity in someone causing terror. And that we can enter in and have conversations that, if we're civil, I think people actually listen to us. So that's my spiel. If you're listening, thank you. And yeah, just love one another. Even the people who are most impossible to love. That's the command. Love our enemies. I have no hesitation calling people of the alt-right movement are my enemy. You're my enemy. If you support those ideas, you're my enemy, and you're against the values that I love. But I will love you by being able to have that conversation, by being able to hear why you see things the way that you do, and being able to question and hopefully inform you of why you are wrong. So everyone, have a good night. I'm going to now drive back home. So grace and peace. Thanks, guys.